December 1944. The sky over Germany belongs to the Predators. A lone American P-51 pulls away from formation, trailing smoke. 4 Messerschmitts circle like wolves. And the entire doctrine of aerial combat will be quietly rewritten by a man no one thought would survive his first month. The winter of 1944 is the coldest Europe has seen in decades. Ice forms on canopies at 20,000 feet. Breath freezes mid-exhale, metal contracts and guns jam. This is the season when the Luftwaffe makes its final stand, throwing every remaining veteran pilot into the frozen corridor between the Rhine and the Elbe. The 8th Air Force loses bombers by the dozen. Escort fighters stretch their fuel to the breaking point, weaving protective boxes around the lumbering fortresses. Every mission is mathematics. Range plus ammunition plus altitude equals survival or a ratio. There is no middle ground. The 357th Fighter Group operates out of Leiston, a muddy airfield on the Suffolk coast. The Mustangs sit in revetments lined with sandbags, their aluminum skins slick with frost each dawn. Mechanics work through the night with numb fingers, torquing bolts and patching holes. The smell is aviation fuel, cordite, and wet wool. In the ready room, pilots huddle near a potbelly stove. Maps are pinned to plywood walls. Intelligence officers brief with clipped efficiency. The targets are deep. The opposition is experienced. Survival depends on discipline, formation integrity, and not doing anything stupid. Captain Robert M. Wilcox sits in the back row, 23 years old, thin face, sharp eyes, a mechanic's hands. He listens but doesn't speak much. His logbook shows 37 missions, no confirmed kills, not because he's a poor shot, but because he rarely fires. He watches, he thinks, and that makes him dangerous in a way no one has yet understood. His squadron mates call him lucky because he's never been hit, not once. In a war where aluminum and flesh meet high-velocity steel daily, that kind of luck draws suspicion. Some think he hangs back. Others think he's just cautious. A few think he's working something out in his head, some equation the rest of them haven't seen yet. The mission brief for December 12th is Stuttgart, a synthetic oil plant. Expected enemy fighters, many. Expected losses, acceptable. The word acceptable does a lot of work in wartime English. They take off in the pre-dawn dark, engines coughing blue flame from exhaust stacks. 48 Mustangs form up over the channel, then turn east into the pale winter sun. Below, the fields of France are white and silent. Above, contrails stretch like chalk lines across a frozen blackboard. Wilcox flies in the third element, tucked into the formation's trailing edge. His wingman is a lieutenant from Ohio, 20 years old, eager and terrified in equal measure. Wilcox told him yesterday to stay close and watch the sun. The kid nodded. Wilcox didn't say more. Words are cheap at altitude. The bombers appear as a dark smudge on the horizon. 200 B-17s stacked in combat boxes, their contrails braiding the sky. The fighters slide into escort position, weaving above and behind. Radio chatter is minimal. Eyes scan the empty blue, searching for the glint of canopy glass. The dark speck that grows into danger. The Luftwaffe hits them over the Rhine. They come out of the sun as always. Fokker-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt 109s, 30 or more, splitting into attack elements. The radio explodes with calls. Bandits high, bandits 6 o'clock, break right, break left. The formation fragments into individual fights, each one a geometry problem solved in seconds or not at all. Wilcox sees a 109 dive past him, close enough to see the pilot's head swivel. He doesn't chase. Instead, he pulls up, gaining altitude, watching the fight develop below. His wingman follows, uncertain but obedient. The engagement lasts 4 minutes. 2 Mustangs go down. 1 B-17 drops out of formation, engines streaming fire. The German fighters break off and dive away, regrouping to the north. The American formation reforms, tighter now, bloodied but intact. Wilcox didn't fire a shot. That night, back at Leiston, the debriefing is tense. Pilots slump in chairs, exhausted, replaying the fight in their minds. Claims are filed. Gun camera footage is reviewed. Wilcox sits quietly, his flight report a single paragraph. No contact, no expenditure. His squadron commander glances at him but says nothing. In the barracks, someone mutters that lucky Wilcox is too lucky for his own good. He doesn't respond. He's drawing in a notebook. Diagrams, angles, speed brackets, the arithmetic of predation. If you want more such stories, like and subscribe so these lives aren't forgotten. Robert Wilcox grew up in Decatur, Illinois. His father ran a machine shop. His mother taught piano. The house smelled like cutting oil and sheet music. He was the middle child, quiet, observant, the kind of boy who took apart clocks to understand their rhythm. He didn't play sports. He read engineering journals. At 16, he built a small wind tunnel in the garage using a salvaged fan and balsa wood models. His father watched him test wing shapes for hours, adjusting angles, recording lift coefficients on graph paper. He asked what it was for. Wilcox said he didn't know yet, just curious. He enrolled at the University of Illinois in 1939, studying mechanical engineering. He joined the flying club, not out of romance, but utility. Aviation was applied physics. He wanted to see if the math matched the sensation. It mostly did. When the war came, he enlisted in the Army Air Forces. He didn't wait for the draft. He told his mother it was logical. The country needed pilots. He had the aptitude. She asked if he was scared. He said fear was a variable, not a constant. Primary training was in Texas. He soloed in 7 hours. His instructors noted his precision, but lack of aggression. He flew with mechanical smoothness, never pushing the aircraft past calculated limits. In combat training, he scored well on gunnery but rarely engaged in mock dogfights with enthusiasm. He preferred to observe, to note what worked and what didn't. One instructor wrote in his file, "Technically proficient, lacks killer instinct." Another wrote, "Thinks too much, may hesitate under fire." Wilcox graduated in the middle of his class. He requested fighters, not bombers. They sent him to P-51 transition training in California, then to England in the summer of 1944. His first missions were uneventful. He flew escort. He stayed in formation. He returned with a full ammunition load more often than not. Other pilots racked up kills. Wilcox racked up flight hours. He wasn't afraid. He was calculating. Every engagement he witnessed, he logged. He noted altitude, speed, sun position, attack angles, energy states. He watched how German pilots fought, how they used vertical maneuvers to conserve speed, how they broke off when low on fuel, diving east toward home. He saw patterns. Most fighter pilots thought in terms of individual duels, one-on-one contests of skill and nerve. Wilcox thought in terms of systems, energy management, situational geometry, decision trees. He believed the best fight was the one your opponent didn't know he was in until it was over. His wingman once asked him why he didn't shoot more. Wilcox said he was waiting for certainty. The kid didn't understand. Wilcox didn't explain further. In his notebook he sketched scenarios. If you're outnumbered, don't engage equally. If you can't outclimb them, don't try. If they expect you to run, don't. And if they think you're wounded, let them believe it. He underlined that last line twice. By December 1944, the air war over Germany has become a war of attrition. The Luftwaffe is bleeding experienced pilots faster than it can train replacements. But the pilots who remain are veterans, men with 100 missions, men who know their aircraft like their own heartbeat. The problem for Allied fighters is numerical. German interceptors attack in waves. They don't dogfight anymore. They slash through bomber formations, fire, and dive away before the escorts can react. Hit and run. It works. Bomber losses climb. The doctrine is clear. Stay with the bombers. Don't chase. Your job is protection, not glory. But the doctrine doesn't account for what happens when the enemy has more aircraft than you have ammunition. The 305th 7th Fighter Group loses 3 pilots in 1 week. 2 more come back with damage so severe their aircraft are scrapped. Morale tightens. The math is simple. If the rate holds, none of them will finish their tours. Squadron commanders push for more aggressive tactics. Intercept farther out. Break formation earlier. Engage before the Germans reach the bombers. But that spreads the escorts thin. It leaves gaps. And gaps get men killed. Wilcox sees the problem differently. The issue isn't aggression, it's predictability. The Luftwaffe knows what the escorts will do because the escorts always do the same thing. Formation, discipline, defensive weaving, all sound tactics, all expected. He begins testing something else. On a mission over Frankfurt, he pulls away from the formation during a bounce. Not far, just enough. He throttles back, lets his Mustang drift low. A crippled Mustang. They close to 400 yards. 300. Wilcox doesn't move. 200 yards. They open fire. Tracers arc past his wing. Then he moves. Full throttle, hard left brake, pulling 6 Gs. The Mustang snaps around, energy flooding back into the airframe. The 109s overshoot, their closure rate too high. Wilcox rolls inverted, pulls through and slots in behind the trailing German. 1 burst, 2 seconds. The 109's canopy shatters. It rolls left and falls away, trailing smoke. The second German brakes hard, trying to climb out. Wilcox doesn't follow. He noses down, accelerates, and extends away. The German climbs alone, confused, and when he levels out, Wilcox is already gone. No prolonged dogfight, no fuel burned circling, just physics, bait, trap, execution. His wingman is silent on the way home. At debriefing, Wilcox files the claim. 1 destroyed. The gun camera confirms it. The squadron commander asks what happened. Wilcox says he used energy advantage. The commander nods slowly. He doesn't ask more, but other pilots hear about it. The quiet guy who played dead and got a kill. Some think it's clever. Others think it's risky. One captain says it's a stunt. Wilcox doesn't argue, he just writes in his notebook. Test 1. Successful. He runs the test again 3 days later. Same setup, different result. The German doesn't take the bait. He circles high, cautious. Wilcox aborts and rejoins formation. No harm. But now he knows. It works on aggression, not caution. He refines the model. You can't fake damage too early. You can't fake it too obviously. It has to look real. Engine smoke, shallow dive, erratic control, just enough to trigger predatory instinct, but not suspicion. And you need a wingman who understands that silence means trust, not disaster. He talks to his squadron commander. He says he wants to try something on the next deep mission, something unorthodox. The commander is skeptical. Wilcox walks him through the logic. Energy states. Overshoot mechanics. Psychological advantage. The commander listens. Finally, he says, "You get it one chance. If it doesn't work, you follow standard procedures. Understood?" Wilcox nods. He doesn't say that he's already tested it twice, or that the math says it should work every time against the right opponent. He just says, "Understood, sir." December 19th. The target is Kassel, a rail yard deep in Germany, choked with supply trains heading east. The weather is marginal. Low clouds, ice forming on leading edges. The mission almost scrubs, but the bombers launch anyway. The fighters follow. Wilcox briefs his wingman before takeoff. He tells him what to expect. If I call trail, drop back and go high. Don't follow me down, just watch and cover. The lieutenant asks what he's planning. Wilcox says, an experiment. The flight east is rough. Turbulence bounces the formation. Visibility drops. They cross into German airspace under a gray ceiling, the world below a blur of snow and shadow. The bombers reach the target. Flak rises in black bursts, staining the sky. The fortresses hold formation, bomb bay doors yawning open. Then the fighters come. Messerschmitts, a full group of 30 aircraft, maybe more. They dive out of the cloud deck, slashing toward the bombers in a coordinated attack. The radio erupts. Bandits high, bandits 12 o'clock. Engage, engage. The American fighters break into them. The sky becomes a tangle of contrails and tracers. Wilcox's element is on the bomber's left flank. He sees 4 109s roll in, heading for a straggling B-17. He doesn't go for the leader. He goes for the second pair. Then he does something no one expects. He pulls power. The Mustang slows. He drops the nose slightly, skidding left, uncoordinated. He toggles the smoke generator he jury-rigged from an oil feed line the night before. White vapor streams from his cowling. On the radio, his wingman calls it in. Lead is hit. Lead is trailing smoke. The 2 109s see it. They break off their run on the bomber and turn toward him. Easier kill. The Mustang is low, slow, smoking. They dive in, 1 high, 1 low, textbook bracketing. Wilcox counts to 3. Then he cuts the smoke, slams the throttle to the firewall, pulls hard into the diving 109. The Mustang's speed jumps 40 knots in 2 seconds. The turn tightens. The German realizes too late. He tries to pull out. He can't. Wilcox is already inside his radius. 1 short burst. 30 rounds. The 109's wing root shreds. The aircraft snaps inverted and spins into the clouds. The second German overshoots. His speed too high. He tries to zoom climb. Wilcox rolls, pulls vertical, and meets him at the apex. Another burst. Canopy and cockpit disintegrate. The 109 tumbles backward, wingless. Elapsed time. 40 seconds. Wilcox's wingman is shouting. He got 2. He got both. But Wilcox isn't done. He spots another flight of 109 circling east, regrouping. They haven't seen him yet. He climbs into the sun, throttle full, altitude building. His wingman follows, silent now, understanding the rhythm. Wilcox runs the trick again, but this time he adds a variant. He doesn't just fake damage. He fakes panic. He breaks away from his wingman, diving erratically, as if he's lost situational. Their commitment. When they're 400 yards out, he pulls into a climbing spiral, engines screaming. The lead German follows. The other 2 try to cut him off. Wilcox rolls out at the top, inverts, and dives straight back through them. Head on. It's insane. It's also geometry. He fires. The lead 109 explodes. He doesn't pull up. He keeps diving, threading between the other 2. They scatter, surprised, instincts overriding training. One breaks left, the other breaks right. Wilcox chops throttle, extends flaps, and whips the Mustang around in a turn so tight his vision grays. He pulls lead on the left-hand German and fires. Hits. The 109 rolls over, trailing fuel. The last German runs. Wilcox doesn't chase. He retracts flaps, checks fuel, and climbs back to altitude. His wingman rejoins, breathing hard over the radio. 4 down, 2 minutes, maybe less. The bomber stream is pulling away. The remaining German fighters are scattered, low on fuel, heading home. Wilcox slots back into the escort formation as if nothing happened. No one on the radio says anything. At debriefing, the gun camera footage rolls in silence. The intelligence officer counts the kills, confirms them. 4 destroyed. The squadron commander watches without expression. When it's over, he asks, "Anyone else try this?" No one answers. He looks at Wilcox. "Write it up. Procedures, setup, execution. I want it typed and on my desk tomorrow." Wilcox nods. The report is 3 pages, typed, diagrams included. Wilcox titles it, "Exploitation of Predatory Instinct in Enemy Fighter Tactics." He lays out the concept methodically. The Luftwaffe's experienced pilots are aggressive, but not reckless. They attack damaged or isolated aircraft because it's efficient, low risk, high reward. But that aggression creates a predictable response pattern. If you can fake the appearance of damage convincingly, you invert the engagement. The predator becomes the prey. They commit to an attack profile that assumes you're vulnerable. You're not. You use their closure speed and tunnel vision against them. The key variables: altitude, speed differential, and timing. You have to bait them at the right energy state. Too high and they won't commit. Too low and you can't recover. The margin is narrow but repeatable. He includes performance data, Mustang acceleration curves, turn radius versus speed, overshoot geometry. He references test flights he conducted over Leiston using other friendly aircraft as simulated aggressors. He does not mention that he built the smoke generator himself from spare parts, or that he tested it at night, alone, so no one would ask questions. The squadron commander reads it twice. Then he walks it to group. The group commander reads it. He calls in the operations officer. They spread the diagrams on a table and go through them step by step. The operations officer says it's too risky. If the trick fails, you're slow, low, and alone. Dead. The group commander asks, "How many times has Wilcox used it?" 6 times, 6 kills, no damage. The operations officer goes quiet. The group commander says, "Train 2 other pilots. Volunteer only. We'll run it on the next deep mission. Controlled test. If it works, we expand it. If it doesn't, we stop." 3 days later, 2 captains sit in a briefing room with Wilcox. He walks them through the technique. Not just the mechanics, but the psychology. You have to sell it. If you're faking, they'll see it. You have to commit to the role. Damaged aircraft don't fly smoothly. They skid. They wallow. They look panicked. One captain asks, "What if they don't bite?" Wilcox says, "Then you didn't sell it? Or they're out of fuel. Either way, you abort and rejoin. No loss." The other captain asks, "What if they're smarter than you think?" Wilcox says, "Then you're in a fair fight, and you use standard tactics. But most of the time, they're not thinking. They're reacting. Reaction is predictable. They practice over the North Sea. Mock engagements. One Mustang plays the bait. The others play aggressors. It takes 4 runs before the first captain gets the timing right. The second captain is smoother. By the 6th run, they're both executing cleanly. On December 23rd, they fly the mission. The target is an airfield near Munich. Expected enemy resistance, heavy. The Luftwaffe is defending its remaining bases with everything left. The intelligence officer says, "Don't expect them to run. They'll fight over home ground. The strike package crosses the Alps. The mountains below are white and sharp. The bombers lumber through thin air, engines straining. The fighters weave above, watching the sky. The Germans come up in force. 30 fighters, maybe 40. They hit the formation head-on, a massed attack designed to break the escorts and scatter the bombers." Wilcox's flight is on the southern flank. He sees a group of Focke-Wulfs climbing toward them. He radios the 2 trained captains. Execute. All 3 Mustangs break formation. They dive, trailing smoke, erratic and wounded-looking. The Focke-Wulfs see it. Easy kills. They roll in. It's a slaughter. The 3 Mustangs whip around in sequence, energy exploding back into their airframes. The Germans, committed and fast, overshoot into firing solutions they didn't know existed. Wilcox gets 2. The first captain gets 1, the second captain gets 2. Elapsed time, 90 seconds. The remaining Germans break off, confused, scattering in all directions. The bomber formation holds. Not a single B-17 is lost to fighters that day. At debriefing, the group commander listens to the reports. He watches the gun camera footage. When it's over, he says, "We're teaching this to the entire group, starting tomorrow." Within a week, every pilot in the 357th has been briefed on the technique. Some try it, some don't. But those who do start logging kills at rates the group hasn't seen since the summer. The tactic spreads. Other groups hear about it. Flight leaders visit Leiston, sit in on briefings, take notes. By January, it's being used across the 8th Air Force. The Luftwaffe notices. Their intelligence officers debrief surviving pilots who describe Americans faking damage, then striking. Warnings go out. Do not engage apparently wounded aircraft without caution. Verify damage before committing. But in combat, caution is slow. And slow is dead. The tactic keeps working. Wilcox flies 16 more missions. He logs 9 more kills using variations of the technique. He never loses a wingman. He never takes serious damage. Other pilots call him the professor now. He doesn't mind. In his notebook, he writes, "Predators hesitate when prey stops acting like prey. Hesitation is a kind of death." The measurable impact is undeniable. In December 1944, the 357th Fighter Group's kill-to-loss ratio jumps from 3-1 to 7-1. Bomber losses on missions with trained bait escorts drop by 40%. The data is compiled, analyzed, and forwarded to 8th Air Force Headquarters. In January, a training memorandum is distributed across all fighter groups. It's titled, "Tactical Deception in Air-to-Air Engagement." It doesn't mention Wilcox by name, but every pilot who reads it knows where it came from. The technique is refined. Pilots develop variants. Some use terrain, diving toward cloud decks and pulling up at the last moment. Others use formations, one aircraft baiting while others set up high. The principle remains: exploit aggression through deception. The Luftwaffe adapts slowly. By February, German pilots are more cautious, but caution costs them initiative. And in 1945, the Luftwaffe has no time left for caution. Wilcox's final tally is 13 confirmed kills, all but win using the tactic he developed. He never names it. Other pilots call it playing possum or the wounded duck. In official after-action reports, it's listed as energy deception maneuver. He completes his combat tour in March 1945. He's offered a promotion and a training command position. He declines. He says he wants to go home, finish his degree. The group commander doesn't argue. Before he leaves, a young lieutenant asks him how he came up with the idea. Wilcox says he didn't invent anything. He just watched what worked and what didn't, then tested a hypothesis. The lieutenant asks if he was ever scared it wouldn't work. Wilcox says, "Every time." But fear doesn't change the math. Either the physics is sound or it isn't. After the war, analysts at the Air Force Tactical Center study the 357th's records. They note the anomaly. A single pilot's contribution that ripples across an entire theater. They classify the reports, file them, and move on. There are 1,000 such stories. Most are forgotten, but the pilots who flew with Wilcox don't forget. At reunions decades later, they tell the story of the man who turned predators into prey. They talk about the 2 minutes over Kassel when the sky fell and the math held. One veteran, interviewed in 1982, says, "He didn't look like a killer. He looked like an accountant. But he understood something the rest of us didn't. Combat is just physics with consequences." Robert Wilcox returned to Illinois in the spring of 1945. He finished his engineering degree. He married a woman he met in a university library. He worked for Caterpillar, designing hydraulic systems. He had 3 children. He never spoke much about the war. In the 1970s, a researcher contacted him while writing a history of the 357th Fighter Group. Wilcox agreed to an interview. He answered questions carefully, precisely, with the same methodical clarity he brought to combat. The researcher asked if he considered himself a hero. Wilcox said no. He said he was a pilot who paid attention. The researcher asked what he learned from the war. Wilcox paused. Then he said, "That the most dangerous enemy is predictability, yours or theirs. And that survival isn't about being fearless, it's about being rational when rationality is hard." The interview was published in a small aviation journal. 14 people read it. Wilcox died in 1991 at the age of 70. His obituary mentioned his work at Caterpillar and his service in World War II. It did not mention the kills. It did not mention the tactic that changed how an Air Force fought. His logbook and notebooks were donated to the Air Force Museum. They sit in a climate-controlled archive in Ohio. Researchers occasionally request them. The diagrams are still clear. The handwriting is still neat. The logic is still sound. In modern air combat training, the concept of energy deception is taught as a foundational tactic. Instructors don't always know where it came from. They just know it works. Because a quiet engineer from Illinois proved that war is not won by the loudest or the boldest. It's won by those who see the pattern, test the hypothesis, and act when the math is certain. He didn't change the war with speeches or grand gestures. He changed it with a notebook, a stopwatch, and a willingness to look weak when strength was the only currency that mattered. His squadron thought he was finished. The enemy thought he was prey. Both were wrong. And in 2 minutes over Germany, 13 pilots learned the hardest lesson of the air war: that the most dangerous opponent is the one who makes you believe you've already won.